Welcome to Aging Insights. I'm Grace Egan, Executive Director of the New Jersey Foundation for Aging. The Foundation's mission is to enable seniors to live with independence and dignity in their communities. Aging Insights is produced by the Foundation to provide information and resources to boomers, seniors, and caregivers. The primary focus of the program is to connect people to community-based programs. On this episode, we were going to share some of the details from the New Jersey Elder Index data and speak with two experts on housing issues. I'm joined today by Arnold Cohen, Senior Policy Coordinator of the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, and Kim Cole, Education Outreach Coordinator at NaviCore Solutions. Thank you both for being here today. I know I've spoken with you both in the past about housing issues and about the Elder Index. The Elder Index is a report that the New Jersey Foundation for Aging has done since 2009. And one of the shocking, I will say shocking details is that we know that 30% of all New Jersey seniors rely solely on their Social Security benefits, which was not what they were really meant to be. And we also know that there's a growing gap between people's living expenses and what their income is. So if you're on a fixed income, there really are some very serious questions. So when we look at the cost for a single renter in a one-bedroom apartment, we know that the costs are $29,500, for instance. And this is the state average. So it's a little less in some counties and can go up as much as to $31,000 in some of the more expensive counties. So when we look at what the average Social Security is for a woman in New Jersey, it's $15,191. So you could see right away that there's a significant gap between the income for the person who's solely relying on their Social Security and what their rental costs might be. When we look at the monthly cost of somebody living in a one-bedroom apartment, we know that they spend 47% of their income on their housing expenses. And for a single person, this is their most expensive cost. When someone's a couple, it goes up to about $40,000 for them to be in that one-bedroom apartment. And yes, they may have two Social Security benefits, but their most expensive cost at that point is really their health care. So which is why I really wanted to focus on housing issues, because I think it's so important and it's the biggest support. We talk about connecting seniors to food programs and a variety of other programs that can help them and improve their quality of life. But housing is the one that gives them the most economic bump, shall I say, gives them the most security that they could possibly have. So I'm really pleased that you're both here today. As I said, we've talked about this in the past. But Arnold, why don't you tell people a little bit about the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey?
Sure. So the Housing Community Development Network, we're in our 25th year, and we're a statewide network of nonprofits that are there in communities throughout the state, trying to provide homes that are affordable and working on making those communities better places for people to live. Some of our members are dealing with senior housing, others housing for the disabled, others housing for an array of people that are based within a certain community. So it has a variety, but the issue that they're all facing is being able to get the resources to be able to do their job in a better way. Mm-hmm. And as a network, we connect all the groups to be able to give them the training they need and to work on policy issues so that policies on a state, local, and federal level are reflecting the needs of lower income people throughout the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine that's probably the most complicated issue to work on in terms of federal, local, and statewide policy issues. So, but we've had a housing shortage for decades, absolutely decades. And how do we know what affordable housing units we need?
Yes.
Yes?
So, and the reality is, so here in New Jersey, for example, we have over 250,000 households that are paying over half their income for housing. So that's really folks that need a better housing situation. When you're paying, as you were saying before, when you're paying over half your income for housing, it's not leaving enough money for those other necessities in life. And although we've been facing a crisis for a long time, it's getting worse. The amount of dollars that are coming from the federal government to be able to address housing needs are less and less each year. We have state government that is not over this current governor. There has been zero amount of money put in from the state coffers to help create new housing opportunities, either through rehabilitation or building new. So we need to reverse that.
Right. Well, I definitely appreciate that. I guess I sort of wonder at times what affordability really means. And I know I've mentioned this in the past, but I was surprised to find out that my township had senior affordable housing. And I contacted the senior manager because I wanted the details. I was surprised, having lived in the community for over 25 years, that we had these housing units. And so I called and they said, well, as a single person, you could have an income of $39,000. And as a couple, you could have $41,000. And I was surprised. And then they said, oh, but you need $28,000 to move in, to apply. Now go back to that average Social Security for a woman in New Jersey at $15,000. And for a man, the average is $19,000. And so, you know, it struck me that there are so many people that wouldn't meet that qualification of getting into that affordable housing. So, you know, it's sometimes not as easy to have someone, shall I say, fit into whatever the guidelines are. Is that what you see too?
Yeah, well, this is why the housing voucher program is critical, because what that will do is somebody with a housing voucher, they're paying 30% of their income towards their housing costs. And so a lot of these senior units, the way people are being able to afford it is by having a housing voucher.
So before we go on to anything else, how does someone get a voucher?
The problem here is, again, is that there's less and less vouchers
Are they
that
federal?
are coming from the federal government. We also have state vouchers. But most programs throughout the state, they're not even taking people on a waiting list for voucher. Those programs are closed and will open up occasionally, and people need to keep their eyes open for when the voucher program may open up. But unfortunately, it has not been increasing, and funding has really been frozen for the voucher programs.
Where would someone find out about the vouchers being reopened?
So the voucher programs are run through what's called public housing authorities, which, depending upon where you live, may be on a local municipal level or on a county level. And the state of New Jersey has its own housing voucher program.
And you can take these vouchers to a regular apartment if your landlord's willing to take them, is that right?
So there's really two kind of vouchers.
Oh, okay.
Okay. One is one that's called portable vouchers that you can take to live anywhere.
Okay.
And others are called project-based vouchers, which means that affordable housing unit has a certain amount of vouchers attached to it. And you can get a voucher living in that particular housing development.
Got to stay on your toes to get these vouchers, I'm thinking. You know, when I think of the Elder Index, we know that 255,000 seniors can't close the gap. And when we look at that housing cost, it often is the most significant. And I know your network often talks about the cost burden. And is that, when we talk about the Elder Index, we're looking at costs for housing, which is rent or mortgage, utilities, property taxes. We're looking at their food costs, their transportation. We're looking at their health care costs and miscellaneous. When you look at the cost burden, are you looking at one specific cost center?
So you're looking at the costs for housing.
Just housing,
And
okay.
so when we talk about people paying over half their income for housing, we're talking about those housing costs, which basically means your rent, and if you have to pay utilities, if you have to pay for your own heat, and that, again, depends upon what your arrangement might be. And the same thing's true in terms of home ownership. It's your cost associated with that home that you live in.
Right. We've seen the costs go increase over the past 5 years. That's the other thing the report does for us, because we have the 2009 data, we have the 2012 data, and we have the 2014 data. And we know that the state average for an apartment has gone up 14% in 5 years. We know for a homeowner, that it's gone up up to 20 or 22%. It just depends where you live. But at that same time, looking at those people on fixed incomes, they haven't seen their Social Security go up. They haven't seen a growth in their assets because they experienced the same recession we did, which is why I really feel it's so important to talk about housing and what kind of benefits we can connect people to. Do you see any, shall I say, new horizon on state policy in terms of housing? Don't depress us.
So in New Jersey, we're the only state in the nation that has a constitutional obligation for municipalities to be able to zone for where housing affordability is. That's
Is that good?
run by it's excellent.
Okay.
And it's run by what's called the Council on Affordable Housing, or what people know as COA.
They probably see that in the newspaper a lot.
And the problem is that new rules were supposed to be put in place so towns know how much affordable housing they need to be zoning for in their particular towns. That has not been done over the last 15 years, and so this issue is right now in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court
of
New Jersey. Hopefully the Supreme Court will help move things forward so that so towns know what they need to do and start providing that housing on a local level for folks of lower income.
And the estimates of what would be needed are based on population?
So what it's based upon is the amount of new people entering the housing who have housing needs. And so there's been different formulas in the past, and that really is the subject of debate of what that exact formula should be. But whatever it is, it's sort of the thing of it when you see it, who needs housing.
Right.
And each town should be doing something to provide for that housing need.
And what about the federal programs? Do you see any potential there?
So the thing that we're working on is what's called to have a National Housing Trust Fund. This was a piece of legislation that was signed into law by President Bush back into 2008. The source of funding, which was supposed to be Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, was at that point in 2008 went into receivership because of the housing crisis. And so the federal government, once again, just last month, ordered that a part of the proceeds from those programs be used to fund the National Housing Trust Fund. That will provide some new money starting in 2016. We're also working to be able to try to get what's called a mortgage interest deduction. Mortgage interest deduction in this country is something that greatly benefits the rich. And if you don't itemize your taxes, which many elderly do not do, even though you're a homeowner, you get no benefit from that mortgage interest deduction. And so there's a bill in Congress to try to modify that so that we put a ceiling on the mortgage interest deduction from a mortgage of $1 million to $500,000. And that we make it into a credit so that every homeowner can benefit from it, no matter how low income you are. And we use the savings that get generated to fund the needs of low-income renters. So we see there's a much fairer program that will benefit many more people and use the current tax dollars going to housing in a much fairer way.
This is very detailed, but the reason why I'm asking these questions is I want our viewers to know if there's advocacy that they can do both at the state and at the federal level. I think it's very important for people to understand where their voices can be heard. And I just want to, again introduce Kim, who's from NaviCore Solutions, which is a new name for your organization.
Yes.
And the reason is that I know you do a lot of work with seniors, but why don't you explain what NaviCore does? And we're sort of moving from a little more of the policy and the details into, hands-on.
NaviCore Solutions has been around since 1991, and what our focus is on financial counseling and housing counseling. So what we are primarily doing is working one-on-one with homeowners that are experiencing difficulties with paying their mortgage. We're working with them to try to help them with the situation through working with their mortgage company on modifications and things along those lines. And also, we have a real strong push in educating individuals prior to home ownership, prior to getting themselves involved in higher level rentals, so that hopefully they understand that, like Arnold said, 30% of their income is what should kind of be designated for housing costs, and a better understanding of how all of that works.
Whether they're renters or homeowners.
Correct.
And I know I'm often asked questions about reverse mortgages.
Yes.
And so I think your work with reverse mortgages is very important for people to understand.
Definitely. We are one of the federally recognized agencies through Housing and Urban Development to perform the required financial education and counseling for the HECM, or the home equity conversion mortgage, the reverse mortgage, which I personally think is one of the biggest benefits of that loan product, because that loan product as a whole can be a very difficult one to maneuver through. Comes with a lot of different rules and different caveats, and the financial counseling gives the homeowner the ability to get a better understanding of what they're entering into.
Yeah, and I understand that oftentimes people like to bring in other family members so that people understand.
And that's something that we actually advocate, because this loan product is something that can become a multi-generational issue. And as a result, what it can do is impact the heirs to the property. So having everybody around the table makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, it's I think the question of making sure that you're doing maintenance, making sure that you're doing insurance, making sure that your niece doesn't think she's going to inherit the house.
Absolutely.
Because the only way for a family member, in my understanding, to have a house after it's in a reverse mortgage situation is they have to buy it.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct. And one of the things that we are seeing is kind of a turn where many seniors are running out of the money that they initially borrowed in their reverse mortgage, and they've been using those funds for living expenses and to cover things like their homeowner's insurance and their property taxes. Now that they have outlived essentially the equity in the property, they're back to square one. So a lot more planning needs to be done in a loan product like this than, say, a standard mortgage.
And is that the counseling that you offer
It
folks
is.
when they come in?
It
That's
is, and
great.
we sit down. I will tell you, it is a fairly long process. It can be 2 hours at times, and we are going through the loan product and the different options and making sure that when the homeowner leaves us, they have the information that they need to make the right decision. Which we think is key, that they walk away with the knowledge to say whether or not this is the right move for them.
Yeah. I was offered the question about reverse mortgages because somebody said, those celebrities, they're always pushing them.
Yes.
And I said, well, they're not right for everyone.
They are not right. They can be a very costly loan product. The reverse mortgage tends to come with very high fees. And for some homeowners, it can be a godsend. It could really be what pulls them out of certain situations. For others, it can be a very costly endeavor that can result in the loss of the home.
Right. When we look at the number of seniors that we feel have difficulty closing the gap, we know that 75% of that 250,000, hopefully, are homeowners.
Yes.
So, it's a real challenge whether you're a renter or whether you're a homeowner. And we know the people that are most vulnerable, given the statistics and the demographics, is women, single women. Also, those that are over 75 and 85, many of those people, as you say, may have outlived the equity in their home if they've done that, and minorities. And, the funny thing is it's true across all counties, whether you're in Warren County, Sussex County, Passaic, Hudson, Essex, all the way down to Cape May. So that's why I think it's so important. But when I think about some of the counties, I know NaviCore Solutions has done a lot of work with Sandy victims.
We have. Our office base is located right in Monmouth County, kind of right in the heart of where the hurricane impacted. So we've been doing a lot of work with Monmouth and Ocean County residents. And what we are still seeing is there are still a number of families that are displaced, and that there is still a lot of need out there.
Even after 2.5 years.
Absolutely. We participated in several different initiatives, one of them being the Sandy Homeowner and Rental Assistance Program. And quite frankly, we were amazed to see how many people 2 years later are still trying to balance a mortgage and rent at the same time and focus their funds and their energy on rebuilding their home.
Mm-hmm. Do you see people going into foreclosure because
All the time.
of their Sandy damaged property?
Absolutely, all the time. Sandy damaged homeowners are in a very strange predicament in the sense that their home has been destroyed, yet they still have the same balance on their mortgage that they had prior to the storm. And for a lot of them, trying to make the determination on whether or not it's worth it to now
Rebuild.
have to, in a lot of cases, borrow more money, whether it be from the SBA,
Small Business Association?
yes,
Sorry.
or other organizations to do the rebuild on top of the existing mortgage that they have on a property that essentially is worth nothing at this point in time, is a very, very tough decision. And again, a lot of the Sandy victims live for today, and right now they need the rent paid because that's where the roof is over their head. And if there's not enough money to go in two places, we have found that a lot of them are letting the mortgage go and focusing the funds, of course, on their current rental, which doesn't make things any easier for them, unfortunately.
And I presume you've seen a lot of seniors. What sense do you have in terms of seniors that have been displaced?
My concern when it comes to the seniors that have been displaced is that they may not be as savvy to how all of this works as maybe somebody that is younger and willing to get in there and kind of fight for what they need. I think it can become a little overwhelmed by the fact that they're dealing with the insurance company, they're dealing with the government, they're dealing with FEMA, the rent and the mortgage, and it becomes incredibly overwhelming.
Right.
And for seniors, a lot of them lost homes that they have been in for 40 and 50 years. That puts a whole different spin
True.
on the loss. So I think that the stress level, the anxiety level that comes with the loss of the property, their health was not perfect prior to the storm. We've seen many seniors' health continue to fail at a quicker rate. Matter of fact, there were some studies that were done for the emotional impact that the storm has had, and it's quite upsetting to see the toll that this has taken on the seniors. And I would say we've probably seen about 50 or 60% of the people that have reached out to us for assistance be members of the senior community.
And I would imagine that there were shortages in facilities, not homes, but in facilities before, and maybe some of this catastrophe has forced them to sort of change their living situations totally too. I think
Definitely.
you were mentioning some assisted living spikes as well.
Yes, we were seeing a kind of an uptick in assisted living facilities. I think they said that there was an estimate of about 18% of an uptick right after the storm. We've also seen a number of families now multi-generationally living together in much smaller accommodations than they would have planned, because the fact that with a senior-based income, their rent may have been comfortable or their mortgage may have been comfortable, but trying to balance both now is just way beyond their means.
Right. Well, I appreciate your empathy, I think, when I see when you talk about your clients. And Arnold, I mean, given all this, do you see an additional push perhaps with the housing policy?
One of the bills that we've got introduced in the state legislature is one to put a moratorium, a 3-year moratorium on foreclosures for people that were affected by Sandy. And we'll be pushing on that piece of legislation. There is going to be a third round of money for Sandy. There's a website that the state has, New Jersey Stronger.org. That people can go to find out what the current programs that are out there. So this is a continual issue in New Jersey that we will be fighting to try to address those needs.
I know when people call our office about senior housing options, we always give them their county offices on aging, but I understand that there's something at DCA, is that
Yeah,
right?
so Department of Community Affairs of the state actually has a listing broken down by counties that tells you where affordable housing is. And because there, as we said before, there's not one-stop shop. There's not
Right.
one place you can go to get on the list of all the housing programs. This at least gives you a list, and you can then call up each of the senior, housing
Or
communities.
public health, not public housing.
Or public
sorry.
housing,
Right.
and to get on the waiting list. And you have to get on the waiting list of each of these developments.
Right.
But at least this gives you the phone number and where to call to be able to know where those developments are in places where you wish to live.
I think that's important because we want people to be able to stay connected with their communities. So I want to also make sure that people know how to get in touch with Kim, and so you have a 1-800 number?
We do, 1-800-992-4557. When dialing that number, that gets you directly to a financial counselor who has a wealth of resources. They can get you right over to our housing department if there is an issue with mortgage or an interest in counseling for reverse mortgage. And one of the things that we do, and I think we do best, is just a general education for people that are struggling with their finances.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I think what's important here is that there's a lot of folks out there that are scams that are saying, we'll provide you financial information.
Right.
Places,
Yes.
HUD counselors do that for free. If somebody's
Absolutely.
charging you money, don't go to them.
Go elsewhere.
I couldn't agree more. I could not
Right.
agree more. It's something that we have seen over and over again.
And so you see that on your website. It says HUD-approved housing counseling.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so I think
But
you bring up a
again,
good point.
there are places that have made their website look like they're HUD approved, and they're not. And so again, it's making sure nobody's charging you money for the service that they're providing to help educate you about what you can be doing with your housing situation.
Okay, I think this is really important information, and I really appreciate you both sharing it today, so thank you. Aging Insights is produced by the New Jersey Foundation for Aging and is made possible by donations to the foundation. To become a sponsor for Aging Insights, please go to our website, which is www.njfoundationforaging.org, or you can call our office at 609-421-0206. All of our previous shows are also on our website, so you can see them, a lot of topics. And we want to remind you to find out about senior services in your area to please contact your county office on aging. And their numbers are on our website, or you can call the state hotline number at 1-877-222-3737. Thank you for watching this episode of Aging Insights. And remember, aging is everyone's business.